Welcome to the BartenderHQ.com podcast. Find us on Facebook and Twitter at BartenderHQ. Here's your host, David Sangwell.
Hi guys, and welcome to the BartenderHQ.com podcast with me, your host, David Sangwell. This week on the BartenderHQ.com podcast, we've got a couple of different items and then a bigger section on Flair. But first and foremost, the little news sections that we've got here. So there's a couple of reports out this week. First one is that only 5% of Brits are keen to try new drinks in 2015. Now, this is one of those stories that's obviously been done as a study, and people have been asked in some sort of a survey what they plan to do. Who plans to try something new drinks-wise? I mean, yeah, you'll get a few people that do a New Year's resolution to try different things or to expand their horizons, that sort of thing. But most people aren't going to plan to try a new drink. So I think this is kind of a bit of a pointless study, if I'm honest. It does go on to say, though, that a lot more people are eating out than going out purely to drink. So, I mean, I think that's quite interesting, and that's something that we could actually take something away from, especially for bar operators out there that don't offer any food, or that it's kind of an afterthought at the moment. So if you are running a wet-led operation and drinks are your main priority, do consider how you could grow your business by adding in a good food option, a good food offering. So, I mean, that's the main thing on here. This was actually from the Morning Advertiser, which is a big trade newspaper in the UK for the bar industry. Yeah, that's pretty much the meat of it. So, in January, the average British household spent £183 on out-of-home leisure, down £8 year-on-year, and down £27 on the month-on-month average. Average household spend on eating out for the month was £74.66, while drinking out was £37.93. So, yeah, obviously it's going to be down from December with things that happen in January, like the dry January, triathlons, all that sort of thing. There has been some initiative this year from the bar industry with things like Try January instead of Dry January, where people are encouraged to try different drinks. And I think from a bartender's perspective, it's your job to kind of help your guests learn about new stuff that they've not tried before. So don't be discouraged by this 5% figure. I think this is sort of based on people's plans, but they're not taking into account when they're offered something new. So if you've got a great new drink, if you've got great new cocktails on your list this year, still make sure you're offering them to your guests, and make sure you're doing everything you can to get as many people as possible to try something new this year. Second little bit of news type item is that Diageo has completed its acquisition of the tequila Don Julio. So Diageo in the past has been the main distributor for Jose Cuervo, and now they're adding the Don Julio, which is a much more premium offering. It's good to see, and tequilas I think are going to be quite a big growth area this year, especially in the UK. At the moment it's still kind of it's even sort of declined as the party spirit, the shooter type spirit that it was in the past. But I think it's definitely due a resurgence. Certainly in the US, the margarita being as popular as it is, in the UK it's nowhere near as popular, partially because I think a lot of places are still not stocking fresh lime juice, especially your pub type bars rather than specific cocktail bars, and where that's starting to filter out and more bars are stocking better quality fresh juices and fresh citrus. I think margaritas could well be something that is worth a look in this year and maybe next year. So yeah, Diageo, congratulations on buying Don Julio. Definitely a good move, moving away from Jose Cuervo, which, while it's a popular brand in terms of brand awareness, I don't think it's the quality that matches up with a lot of the spirits that are becoming popular nowadays. So yeah, that's another nice little acquisition. Okay, so the main topic that I wanted to talk about today is it's to do with flair bartending, which is something that I'm obviously very passionate about, as a lot of you are aware, and that nobody else really covers on podcasts. So what I wanted to talk about is actually things along the lines of competition flair and promoting yourself as a flair bartender and things like that. Now, one of the articles that I wrote, which I'll include in the show notes, quite a long while ago, was that selecting your music and putting together your routine in general is something that needs a lot more care than some people take with it. You've got a couple of camps. I was always of the camp of never having a specific routine when I went into a competition, and I would pretty much wing it all the way through. Put some music on that I liked, and flair as if I was making drinks for my guests at the bar. Now, the advantage of that, which again is discussed in these articles that I'm going to put into the show notes, is that I was quite comfortable behind the bar, and I would do a lot of work in flair generally anyway, and it basically meant that I would steer myself away from any moves that were really too challenging to put into a competition. So I would always do stuff that was fairly safe and have very minimal drops. So I didn't win competitions or do well in competitions by having the biggest, flashiest moves with 5 bottles or whatever. I used to score well because I didn't have the penalties that other people did. I would not spill in a competition. I would rarely drop. I don't think I dropped a bottle in a competition in my last 3 or 4 competitions. Dropped a couple of tins, which is, it happens. But because of the way that I work behind a bar, I don't drop bottles when I work. I very, very rarely will drop a tin or anything else. Because I do what I know I can do. I don't try to put in stuff that is too difficult for me. So that's a big key, actually, to doing well in competitions. However, I was going in without a routine because generally the flair side of things was a bit of an afterthought to, with TGI Fridays at least, the best bartender category. The other option that I mentioned is going to be for those people that have a specific, this is my track, this is the move at each beat, this is exactly where I am all the way through the track. Now, the reason that I don't recommend that approach is that if you then do have a drop, you've got to try and remember where you're supposed to be in the routine rather than just getting on with flaring. And you see a lot of people that go back and try that move again, and then if they're on a set routine for the sound that is to the beat, you're going to be behind, and I don't know where you catch up with that sort of thing. Now, the way that I personally recommend putting the routines together is this: you create 10 to 20 second blocks of moves in certain categories. So, for example, you create a selection of blocks with 1 bottle and 1 tin working flair, and then 2 bottles working flair, and then 2 tins and a bottle working flair, whatever your working level is. And then the same for exhibition flair, so with different sets of items, you come up with a short routine that you'll do with your glassware, or 2 or 3 of those, depending on what kind of glassware you need to be using. And then, just simply by knowing these blocks, you can have a bit of a plan in your head of exactly what you intend to use in your routine, and then just block these together, so you can know, right, well, I can chuck that block in because I've dropped this, so I can move on to this block and do this section of moves, this kind of chunk, and you basically build your routine like Lego bricks. And then as well, if you do want to go down the route of polishing up individual blocks, you can do that, and then you can put together a timed to the beat type routine using specific blocks that you already know. And that way it makes it much easier for you. You only have to remember sort of 10 or 12 bits of information rather than having to worry about all the others. So give that a try, and that works well for me. Now, from a point of view of music, now in the past I've always sort of advocated going for things like really popular party music. One of my most successful ones that I used was The Automatic, I believe they were called, with a track called Monster. What's That Coming Over the Hill? Is It a Monster? Which is very popular at the time when I was doing the competition at Fridays. Everyone knew the song. It was a big sing-along type thing, so all of the crowd were getting behind it, and then you're also going to get a bit more interaction and things with the crowd. Now that's one option. The other option, which is something that's come to mind a lot more for me recently, now that I've been doing the websites and working with YouTube and that kind of thing, is that YouTube, Facebook, Vimeo, they're all really hot on copyrighted music being used. So for example, I put up a routine which I did at the Masters of Flair competition, and that was using music from the Pitch Perfect movie and a group called Pentatonics, all a cappella music, which is something that I'm also quite into. And it's been blocked from certain markets because it's all copyrighted music that's owned by Sony or whoever it is. So they've made it really difficult to share it with anyone. So from that point of view, that's a bit of a problem. So what I'm advocating now is I go onto YouTube. If you Google YouTube Creator Tools, they have an audio library, and all of there's a whole bunch of tracks that you can use which you can't monetize, which are popular pop tracks. That's kind of useful if you're not bothered about monetizing. If you want to be able to play it anywhere and on any platform, like on phones it might not play, they have a selection of music which is completely royalty free, and you can do what you like with it, basically. I mean, it has got terms of service, but it's pretty free. If you can find some tracks from there, put them together and create yourself your own Flair music that you use in a competition, you then know if you get that filmed, you can do whatever the hell you want with it. You can put it onto YouTube, you can put it onto Vimeo, you can put it onto whatever platforms you want. As far as I know, do obviously check the terms and conditions. They might also vary from country to country. But you can also, if you've got that music track on your computer that you've put whatever tracks it is together to get your music to the right length, you can then also lay that over the top of your video and sync it back to the music on the track. So if you've got a lot of crowd noise or anything like that, or it's muffled, then you can correct that. So that's a big recommendation from me, is use this YouTube music library. It's designed for YouTube creators, and as far as I'm concerned, if you're flaring to a track like this and then you put it on YouTube, that is creating a YouTube video with it. So you shouldn't have any problems with that at all from what I can see. And it will make life much easier. I actually use some of these tracks on the podcast and and also on things like the Facebook videos that we put up and that sort of thing. So have a look at those. They're really, really useful and completely free and real life free. So yeah, have a check into those. When it comes to the actual competition, as I say, there are a couple of articles which I will link to in the show notes that I've written in the past about this, about how to practice as well. This is one of the big things, is making your practice as hard as it can possibly be, so that when you are in a competition, if your bottles are wet or your bottles are sticky, you can deal with it. So check out those articles as well. All of the links will be in the show notes, and hopefully they'll be really useful for you. Now, I just want to sort of wrap that up and apologise for obviously last week there was no show. I was very, very busy working at a convention up in Blackpool with a lot of magicians. I was hoping to film a podcast while I was up there with a guy called Rodrigues, who, if any of you guys have seen, his video's gone a little bit viral on Facebook, and he combines magic with bartending. Now, I met Brendan years ago back at the Oxford Flair competition at Maxwell's. I think it might have actually been his first competition, and he was superb then. He's even better now, and you guys are going to love him. We will still get him on the show. It'll probably be over Skype, like we did with Tom Dyer's interview, so keep an eye out for that. But also the website over at BartenderHQ.com has had a full overhaul. The colour scheme's changed completely. It's a lot lighter. Hopefully it's a lot easier to navigate now. The text is a lot bolder. It's a lot cleaner looking, I think. I'd love to hear what you guys think of it. So if you've got any comments, please leave them in the comments below or message me on Facebook. or drop me an email, david@bartenderhq.com, and I'd love to hear what you think. So that's pretty much it for this week. I'm going to wrap it up here. We're not going to do a tips for tips this week, and we're not going to do a drink of the week. I just wanted to get that Flair stuff out there, and normal service will resume next week. So until next time, find me on Facebook, Twitter, @BartenderHQ, and drop me a message. I'd love to hear from any of you guys. And if there's anything that you want to see on this show, the whole point of doing this is to help you guys. So if there's anything that I'm not doing on this show that you want to see, please let me know, and I will do my very best to help you out. But until next week, guys, thanks very much. I've been David Sangwell, your host, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the BartenderHQ.com podcast. Find us on Facebook and Twitter @BartenderHQ.